Good. Let's start with the Minoans then. Island civilization, Mediterranean traders.
Right. And that immediately suggests something important. Skilled seafarers.
Which means they almost certainly use the stars for navigation,
It's a
right?
very safe bet.
Yeah.
Sailing the Mediterranean, especially at night, you'd rely heavily on celestial navigation. The sources really emphasize this.
Makes sense.
And beyond just navigation, think about their calendar. Key moments, like the heliacal risings. That's when a star first reappears just before sunrise after being hidden by the sun's glare. Those are probably vital. Like Sirius or the Pleiades, they likely mark times for agriculture, planting, harvest, maybe religious festivals too.
Ancient societies lived by those cycles, didn't they? What about their art? Does that give us any clues?
It might. Minoan art is full of nature animals, plants, sea life. The bull is everywhere, of course.
The bull-leaping frescoes, yeah.
So this focus on the natural world could hint at connections they saw between life on Earth and the patterns up in the sky. Maybe some of those animal motifs were their constellations.
Interesting idea. So we have this backdrop. How do researchers actually try to connect these, well, still undeciphered symbols to specific stars? What's the process?
It involves some pretty cool tools, actually. They use astronomical software. Stellarium is a popular one.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It lets them reconstruct the sky as it looked over Crete back in the Bronze Age. Critically, it adjusts for precession.
Precession, that's
That-
Earth's wobble, right. It changes which star is the North Star over long periods.
Precisely. It slowly shifts our view of the stars. So you need to account for that to see what the Minoans actually saw around, say, 1700 BCE. It's like a celestial time machine.
Got it. So they get the ancient sky map. Then what?
Then comes the comparison stage. They look at the disk symbols and compare them with known Minoan art motifs, sure, but also with constellations known across the wider Mediterranean back then.
Okay, looking for matches.
And they test different orientations. Could the disk be aligned with the North Pole? Or maybe specific sunrise-sunset points, like solstices or equinoxes, or those heliacal risings. They're checking if the disk's geometry fits any significant celestial markers.
Trying to find that key, that celestial Rosetta Stone. So what are some of the main alignment theories they've tested? You mentioned the pole star.
Right. One idea is that the disk's center, that spiral's core, represents the North Celestial Pole. Now, around 1700 BCE, Polaris wasn't the pole star. But earlier, around 3000 BCE, Thuban and Draco was.
That's quite a bit earlier than the disk's estimated date.
It is, which is a slight wrinkle. But the concept of a fixed celestial pole, the point everything pivots around, is fundamental. It might have held symbolic importance even if Thuban wasn't precisely the pole star when the disk was made.
Okay, so a symbolic celestial anchor. What about the sun? Its movements must have been crucial.
Absolutely. So another hypothesis looks at solar events. Could the disk's divisions, it has segments, remember, map onto things like the sunrise or sunset points on the solstices or equinoxes?
Like Stonehenge, but on a disk.
Sort of. For example, some researchers link the disk's layout to the angle, the azimuth, of the winter solstice sunrise viewed from a major Minoan site like Augie Triada.
Interesting. And the heliacal risings, linking specific symbols to key stars popping up.
Exactly. That comes up again. Maybe certain symbols are those stars. Sirius, for instance. Its heliacal rising in July was huge in Egypt, probably for the Minoans too. Signaled the flood? The new year, maybe?
And the Pleiades?
Their rising in May could have marked the start of the safe sailing season. So you look for symbols on the disk that might represent these crucial timekeeper stars.
These are all plausible frameworks, but the really detailed stuff comes when they try to link specific symbol clusters to actual constellations, right? In those inner and outer spirals.
Yes, that's where it gets really specific. The disk has 61 segments in total, spiraling inwards. 31 on the outside, 30 on the inside.
Okay.
The hypothesis is that clusters of symbols within these segments correspond to constellations, or maybe asterisms, just recognizable star patterns.
Let's walk through some examples from the sources, starting with that outer ring, the bull's head symbol. That feels like a strong candidate for Taurus, given the Minoan obsession with bulls.
It really does. The bull is so central, and the constellation Taurus contains the Hyades cluster, which is sort of V-shaped.
Like a bull's head or horns.
Exactly. Some see a resemblance. Plus, the heliacal rising of Taurus in April. That lines up with the start of the plowing season. So you have the celestial bull potentially signaling the time for earthly work with oxen.
That's a neat connection. What about the symbol that looks like a dagger or a spike? The sources link that to Orion's belt.
Yeah, the idea there is you have 3 of these symbols in a row on the disk in one segment.
Like the 3 stars of Orion's belt.
Yeah.
Alnitak, Elnilum Mintaka.
Precisely. And Orion, the hunter, often depicted with weapons.
A dagger or spike fits that theme quite naturally.
Okay. And then there's a cluster of 7 dots. That seems almost too obvious, right? The Pleiades?
It's certainly one of the most visually direct suggestions, isn't it?
Mm.
The Pleiades cluster usually shows about 7 stars to the naked eye. We know they were important calendar markers across many cultures.
And they're rising in May, you said, for sailing?
Likely signaled the start of safe maritime travel for the Minoans, so the 7 dots matching the 7 prominent stars. It's compelling.
And one more from the outer ring,
Mm-hmm.
the branch symbol linked to Eridanus, the river constellation.
Right. The symbol itself looks kind of wavy, like a branch or a river. Eridanus is depicted as a long, winding river in the sky, and it's located near Orion and Taurus, constellations we've already mentioned. Rivers mean water, fertility always important for ancient farming cultures.
Okay, so those are some key ideas for the outer spiral. What about the inner spiral, the 30 segments inside? Different part of the sky, maybe. The thinking is they might represent constellations further south, or maybe stars important for navigation, or for marking the zenith when a star passes directly overhead.
These passages are useful for timekeeping, right?
Very precise timekeeping, yes. And potentially for knowing your latitude if you're sailing long distances.
Makes sense. So the ship symbol seems like an obvious link to Argo Navis.
It does seem pretty direct. Argo Navis, the great ship constellation of the southern sky, representing Jason's Argo. Hugely important for ancient Mediterranean sailors.
Even though we've broken it up into smaller constellations now.
Right, but back then it was one massive ship. And it contains Canopus, a very bright star useful for navigation. So a ship symbol for the ship constellation makes a lot of sense for seafarers.
And the flower or star symbol, that's linked to Sirius.
Yes, Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky in Canis Major. Immensely important. We mentioned its heliacal rising. Interestingly, in Egypt, its hieroglyph was sometimes a flower or star-like shape.
Oh, that's a nice parallel.
And its rising coinciding with the Minoan New Year, potentially. That gives it huge significance.
What about the lion symbol, linked to Leo and the star Regulus? You said lions aren't common in Minoan art.
That's true. They're much rarer than bulls or sea creatures. But lions were significant in the Near East and Mesopotamia, where early zodiacs developed. Leo was prominent there.
So maybe some cultural exchange of star lore.
It's possible. And the star Regulus in Leo would have passed very close to the zenith over Crete in late summer, around 1700 BCE.
Late summer. Hardest time.
Often linked to harvest rituals. So even if the animal wasn't a core Minoan symbol, the star's timing might have been important enough to include, perhaps borrowing the symbol.
Fascinating. Okay, last one from the inner register. The shield symbol, linked to Scutum or the Milky Way.
Yeah, a couple of possibilities there. Scutum, the shield, is a small constellation near Sagittarius. Sagittarius itself has sometimes been linked to the Minoan double axe, the Labras. Alternatively, the broad, bright band of the Milky Way stretching across the sky, perhaps that was seen as a kind of protective shield. Both are interpretations, of course.
So if this is a celestial map, what about the spiral structure itself? And the numbers, 31 and 30 segments?
Good questions. The spiral could represent cycles. Maybe the daily rotation of stars around the pole, or the sun's yearly path.
Right.
As for the numbers, 61 total segments. Could that relate to a calendar? Maybe a lunisolar one? You're trying to sync up moon months in the solar year? Perhaps a 61-day ritual cycle between, say, a solstice and an equinox?
And the 30 inner segments, maybe close to a lunar month?
That's one suggestion, yeah. It's all part of trying to decode the underlying logic, if there is one.
And it seems to circle back to calendar and ritual, like that zenith passage of Sirius around the Minoan New Year you mentioned.
Exactly. If they were tracking something that precise, like a star passing directly overhead at a key time of year, it implies, well, a pretty sophisticated grasp of celestial mechanics, deeply woven into their culture. The flower symbol for Sirius becomes even more potent then.
This is all incredibly compelling, but the big issue remains. We can't actually read the script.
That's the fundamental challenge, isn't it? The elephant in the room.
Yeah. So how much is interpretation versus, well, wishful thinking?
It's always a risk with undeciphered artifacts. The astronomical interpretation is built on patterns, visual resemblances, cultural context, astronomical calculations. And those patterns are certainly suggestive. But are they definitive proof? No. We can't know for sure what the Minoans called these symbols or exactly what they meant by them. It remains a hypothesis, albeit a well-reasoned one.